So passive abilities are something which have been in Rainbow Six Siege for a long time. Over the past few years, they've started to move away from adding them to the game as well as removing some, but more recently it does seem like they are open to the idea of passive abilities once again, which is why in this video we're going to be looking at every passive ability in Rainbow Six Siege as of Year 9 Season 4, and I want you all to do me a favor. Drop a comment right now if you think passive abilities should be in the game, or if you think they're too strong. I personally think they are really cool and add more depth to operators. So considering I said they're starting to do more passives recently, let's start off with the most recent defender, Skopos. Now being the first ever playable robot in Rainbow Six Siege, Skopos acts in some interesting ways. And the really cool thing about Skopos' shells is that they are immune to gases. Now for the most part, a lot of the gases that exist in this game are on defense, but these are gadgets which can still affect your fellow defenders, so Skopos being immune to them is still a massive thing. The first one of these operators is Smoke. Before Skopos was added, the only operator in the game who could breathe in Smoke's toxic gas was Smoke himself. Every other attacker and every other defender would have been affected by this, taking damage until they eventually die. This allowed Smoke to play a really cool role since he was the only one who could enter his own gas and use that to swing on an enemy or take them by surprise. But now he is no longer the only one. Since Skopos' shells are robots, they can't breathe in gas and die, so they can perfectly walk through it and take no damage just as Smoke does. This can lead to some really cool synergy moments between Smoke and Skopos, using the toxic canisters and the fact that neither of them can die to them to their advantage. Let's be honest, it would be a bit surprising if the robots didn't take damage from the smoke. Well, that is one of the gas operators on defense that doesn't affect Skopos. The other one is Fenrir. Now, Fenrir's gas acts a little bit different to Smoke's. Smoke's is a toxic gas, whereas Fenrir's is a hallucinogenic, hence why it doesn't damage you. However, at the end of the day, it is still a gas in which you inhale, and just like with Smoke, Skopos' robots don't breathe oxygen or don't breathe in anything, so the gas has no effect on them. And I know some of you may be thinking, well, is there ever a scenario where Skopos' robots would be affected by a dread mine anyway? Yes, actually, there is. If an attacker walks into a dread mine and a defender is in that same area of effect, the defender will also breathe in the gas. At the end of the day, it is still gas. Everyone will breathe it in. It doesn't discriminate. But the only thing that does discriminate is the gadget itself, knowing when to activate, but once it has activated, everyone will be affected from it. And of course, if an active dread mine is hacked by Brava, it will then detonate when defenders walk into it. And something quite cool about Skopos here as well is, although her shells can't be affected by the gas itself, they will still detonate the hacked dread mine because the device itself is detecting someone in its proximity, and since it's hacked, it goes for defenders, but the gas will just not do anything. So there's a cool little strat you could do by just sitting in this active hacked dread mine and waiting for an attacker to push you, because they're going to be affected by the dread mine and you're not. There is quite a few layers there. And I think I should mention this since these are still technically passives, but Doc's Stim Pistol and Thunderbird's Kona Stations have no effect on Skopos' shells. And the funny thing with the Kona Station, unlike the dread mine, is although the Kona Station will detect that you're there, it won't detonate, unlike the dread mine, which will. And of course, since we did just talk about Smoke and Fenrir, Fenrir is immune to his own dread mines because of the filter he has on his mask in front of him. So just like Skopos, if a dread mine is hacked, Fenrir can just sit in the hacked dread mine and have no effect on him. Pretty cool. And of course, Smoke is immune to his own canister. I'm sure you already all knew this one. And in case you are wondering, no, Smoke and Fenrir aren't immune to each other's gadgets. They work separately, so Fenrir can still die to Smoke, and Smoke can still be affected by Fenrir. Next up, we're going to be looking at the attacking shields. Now, all attacking shields actually have a passive ability, with Blackbeard also having an extra one for himself, which we'll get into in a minute. But believe it or not, this ability is the Barricade Shield Bash. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, is this a passive ability? Technically, it is. A passive ability is an ability an operator has that works outside of their core gadget itself, and their gadget can still exist without it. So when it comes to shield bashing barricades and windows, those aren't the core abilities of the shields. Monty's core ability is the full extend. Blitz is the flash ability. Fuse's shield doesn't really have a special perk, hence why this passive is quite good for him. But yes, by all means, this is a passive ability because it doesn't use any utility at all. It doesn't deduct anything from the operator, and if they removed it, the core version of that operator would still exist. Shield bashing is actually a bit controversial. A lot of people feel like it allows shields to take too much space too fast. I think shields are actually pretty decently balanced after Operation Collision Point. I do think they were definitely overtuned between Deadly Omen and this point, and I think any competent player can deal with a shield. Not to say that they're not, you know, powerful to go against, and it does require skill, but I don't think they are as glaringly overpowered as they were before, and I like the position they are in the game, especially since we've been so defender-sided for so long. It's nice to have operators who are really good at taking space. I guess another thing we could include here is the ability to plant with your shield on your back, providing you with cover. So using the same logic, by all means, I guess we could also say that this is a passive ability as well, although not as major. So as I was just saying, when a shield plants with their back turned, the shield will grant them protection. Not really the case with Blackbeard, since he has the hull adaptable shield, so this shield actually retracts on his back, and although it does give him some protection, it is not to the same extent as other shield operators. But what Blackbeard's passive is that when he is on repel, he can silent hot breach any window using his shield, which takes no utility from him, and no other shield operator can do it. You don't have to punch the window, you don't have to break anything, you can just repel up to it, enter the space button, and go straight through that window thanks to your adaptable shield, which is in your arms. Although you could argue that planting with a shield on your back isn't really a passive, this by all means is. And it is really cool because Blackbeard right now is technically our latest new operator, although he is a remaster, but it's a brand new gadget, and it has this passive ability, as does Skopos, who is the most recent defender, so both the newest attacker and defender have passive abilities. Pretty reassuring for all of us who are wanting more passives in the game. I wonder if the Year 10 Season 1 operator will have a passive as well. Next up on the passive list, we of course have Aruni, probably one of the most popular passives in the game. When she melees, she makes a massive hole in the wall. Now, the reason she can do this is because of her prosthetic arm, which is designed by Nighthaven, specifically Osa, so it has the ability to hit walls really hard and actually make a hole in it. This is really good because you can make rotates without using any utility at all. Of course, it does take a bit longer, but the fact that you're not wasting any impacts, any shotgun ammo, is a really cool thing. Now, something that's quite cool is that Skopos, who we've already talked about in this video, was actually considered to get this same ability as well, but they seemingly didn't do it because, especially with how good a passive Aruni has, having two operators being able to do that may have been a bit much. However, it does seem like this was very close to happening. Now, not only can Aruni punch holes in walls, she can also destroy utility with it as well. A big one being friendly castle barricades. She will destroy a castle barricade in one punch, which means you could use that to take the enemies on the other side by surprise. This is also quite a big case where the passive is a massive part of the operator's identity, and it would be weird to see a version of Aruni that wouldn't have this. It just simply wouldn't feel like Aruni anymore. Let's move over to Alibi, because Alibi's one is pretty simple. If there is an Alibi on the board and one of your teammates run outside, or the Alibi herself does, they will remain completely hidden. Now, this used to play into another passive ability for her, which has since been removed, and I kind of understand why they done it because it was quite annoying, and I'll explain what it was. If you threw your Prisma outside, to the attackers, it would display on their screen like someone was running out. You would then, of course, have the whole identity hidden thing, so the attackers couldn't simply just see, oh, it's an Alibi Prisma, forget about it. It played into that whole aspect. But what was quite annoying was if the Alibi just threw her Prisma like on the roof or some random location far away from the operator spawns, which was inconvenient for them to go travel to, you would simply just have text on your screen the entire time you're trying to play saying operator detected outside when it was just a Prisma in a weird location. So it was more of a messy overlay distraction rather than a cool interaction. So I understand why they removed that, but they did still keep the aspect of if any of her teammates or herself do a run out, their identity is hidden and it just says unknown operator detected, which I'm glad they didn't like completely remove all of this. They just sort of removed the more annoying problematic part and kept the cool part, so Alibi still has her passive. Now, Oryx is quite an interesting one because when he came out, it wouldn't be right to class his ability to climb up hatches as a passive. This is because once he would climb up the hatch and reach the other side, it would use his current Rima dashes in which he had stored, and he would then have to wait for them to recharge, sort of like waiting for his stamina to rebuild. So since that was directly linked to the stamina he had in his ability slot, that wouldn't be fair to class that as a passive. But since then, they have now changed it, and the dashing ability and the climbing ability are completely separate, so it is technically fair to now class the climbing ability as a passive, since it is no longer directly tied to his Rima's stamina. And now, I can't make a video video about passives and not talk about Ela and Zofia. Although they no longer have them in the game, they are the two most important operators when it comes to passives in Siege, and are probably the reason why most operators nowadays don't even have a passive and they stop doing them. So first of all, Ela and Zofia had a unique passive interaction with each other when it came to the concussions. If you didn't realize, Ela and Zofia's concussions are the exact same. Just Ela's is in the form of a mine and Zofia's is in the form of an impact projectile. Now because those were the same concussion mines, there was a passive between Ela and Zofia where if they hit each other with their concussion, so if Zofia concussed Ela or if Ela concussed Zofia, they would have 50% less effect on those operators. I honestly thought that one was pretty cool and wouldn't have minded if that one stayed, but Ela and Zofia also had their own individual passives as well. When Ela was injured, regardless if she had a Gersmot mine in her pocket or not, she could deploy one around her and concuss anyone in her area. So if you injured an Ela, she had a few seconds to pull the pin on a concussion, concuss you, and it wouldn't revive her or anything. She would still be injured and you could still kill her, but it was sort of like a last moment haha got you moment she had, where she could concuss you when injured regardless if she had any left. Zofia on the other hand, her passive was when she was injured, she could revive herself, which was known as the withstand ability. This practically meant if you injured a Zofia and you weren't in a position to confirm that kill, she could revive herself without the need of a Finka or anyone else. Now, she would be on disgustingly low HP and a single goo mine would kill her, but in a one-shot headshot game, that is still enough for a fighting chance back. Now, obviously, as of 2025, all of that is gone. There's no withstand, there's no concussion whilst injured, there's no 50% deduction if it's one of them two. Ela and Zofia have nothing, which I think is kind of a shame. I understand withstand going. The Ela concussion one could have stayed if it meant that you had to keep a mine in your pocket and there wasn't just a free one at all times. And I also think Ela would have been quite a good counter to shields, because if a shield injures her and then she concusses them, it would blast their shield on their back, exposing them, and your teammate could then kill them. I actually think that would have kept Ela quite relevant, especially now more than ever. Be against seeing that one return. Withstand for Zofia, I understand why they removed that one. It just kind of made no sense that one random attacker could revive themselves and no other one could unless they were healers, which required their utility. Whereas Zofia, it was not utility based, she simply just had a free revive at any given point. So I understand why they removed it. The Ela one could have stayed in my opinion with just some tweaks, and honestly maybe could have withstand with some more tweaks as well, but I would just like to see more passives in the game overall. This video wasn't really meant to be like a history of all passives, but since I mentioned Ela and Zofia, I'll also mention the fact that Echo used to be completely immune to Dokubi's calls. Maybe they should do that again, considering how overpowered Dokubi is. But yeah, not an insanely long list. That is every passive ability in Rainbow Six Siege as of Year 9 Season 4. Let me know if you think I've missed any. There may be something which you think is a passive, which I wouldn't declare as one. Like when I was looking on Reddit and stuff like that, a lot of people were saying like the Finka interactions were passives and like IQ seeing the diffuser, but that's not passives, that's basic gadget interaction, so there is a fine line there. So yes, be sure to let me know in the comment section below if you want to see more passives in Rainbow Six Siege. I know I definitely do, as long as they're balanced. Be sure to let me know your thoughts, drop a like on this video, sub if you're new, have an incredible rest of your day. I love you all, stay safe, peace.